Welcome to the Medical Device Made Easy podcast. Here is Munir Aladouzi from easymedicaldevice.com, and today we will talk about vigilance reporting. So with the EUMDR, we have some few changes about vigilance reporting, but it's not only EUMDR. We have a lot of other countries that are where we need vigilance reporting. So it's mainly what we will talk about today. And for that, I have with me Adam Rai, which is a medical device QA area consultant. We had Adam before also talking about UKCA also last time. So welcome, Adam, and welcome to the Medical Device Made Easy podcast.
Thanks, Munir. Thanks for having me. Everything, it's quite ironic. Everything we discussed on that last podcast has totally changed now.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's funny because I have also clients because we are UK responsible person for the UK, and I have clients where I'm sending them normally a presentation saying that to them the laws, and they all came to me, but did the law not change? And I forgot to change those presentations, so I'm doing that. So a lot of things are changing. So it's why you have always to keep up to date. That's what we are trying to do within those podcast episodes. Okay, Adam. So just maybe before to start, can you maybe make a quick small introduction of yourself so that people maybe know more about you?
Yeah, sure. I'll try and keep it brief. I love to talk about myself. So, so Adam Rai, as you said, QA consultant, worked in medical devices and IVDs, a couple of active implantable devices for around 8 or 9 years now. Predominantly focused and going into organisations and helping out with remediation projects and establishing QMSs from scratch, focused in the UK as well as the EU, trading into various different regulations, but then also moving into the States. And then, part of this discussion is really discussing all of these other regulatory jurisdictions that come into scope. That's pretty much it. Run my own little consultancy business, fairly moderate.
Great.
And that's it.
And you are in the UK, just for people.
In the UK, based out of sunny Chester in the UK, but I'm from Glasgow, so that's the accent.
Great. So vigilance reporting. So this is really an important topic. It's mainly something that people hear about, have to put in place within their quality management system. But I'm sure they don't want to use it at all, if I can say. And this is the thing. So if for somebody that is maybe new to the medical device or to this life science industry, it has to be clear about what is a vigilance reporting. What would you say to them? What is exactly for you vigilance reporting in few words?
Yeah. So in a few words, vigilance reporting is the management of incidents and potential incidents of the devices that have been placed on the market and the relevant markets that they've been placed on. I think the extensions that have been granted with MDR, one of the main elements that organizations need to consider to be granted that extension under Article 94, 97 and 120 is vigilance. It's so important because it is essentially the part where the businesses and the products connect to the people, the users and the patients. Vigilance system is so important to make sure that if an incident happens to a patient, which is every manufacturer's worst nightmare, or if a near incident also happens, which is equally as important to be considered, occurs, that the manufacturer has effective QMS processes in place to be able to manage that incident and prevent it extrapolating into becoming more of an issue than it already is.
Exactly. And when we talk about incident, it can be because usually when we hear vigilance reporting, people are more thinking about recalls. But mainly it's not only recall. We have also field safety corrective actions, which are mainly that you are just correcting or informing or adjusting the message that you are providing on the market without recalling the device. This is something that can be a thing. So it's not only it's not only recall. So because people are thinking, I don't want to use that because there is a recall. But just going to the markets and informing the market about maybe some issues or whatever is already a field safety corrective action that you have also to have within your system.
Yes. So typically the recall is obviously everyone's worst nightmare. The field safety notice is generally what most organizations would have to do for any incidents or near incidents. Recalls happen, a lot more than I think people in the medical that work outside the medical device industry would think. They're very common. But typically field safety notice is the method of which a manufacturer would communicate. This is where it's also important for manufacturers to have really good traceability procedures in place so they can communicate this stuff really easily so you know where devices have went to. But the method in which manufacturers would use to communicate deficiencies or any occurrences that they know about to users would be through a field safety notice, which is essentially one-page document. There's documentation templates available on the EU Commission websites for this, which we can provide as part of the show notes. I think you want to say, Manil.
Sure.
That's basically a template that says we noticed this deficiency on these batches. I think most people that don't work in this industry would have seen some similar stuff like this with like food or cars kind of thing, that notice that comes out, we have an equivalent. And then there may be some field safety corrective action required as a result of that, which could be, don't use the device, send it back, we need to recall it, kind of stuff like that. But typically the main method is that field safety notice, which is the method for communicating deficiencies.
And for that, we can find them, if I can say, usually on the websites of the competent authority where we find that. But is the requirements, because here we talk about, for example, EU for the EU MDR, but is it the same? Is there the same rules for each country, or it's really different between each country about how to do the reporting?
So it's it's wildly different in a lot of different countries. Some leverage similar. A lot of the processes are the same. Documentation is largely fairly different. Within the EU, there is that template that we discussed for field safety notice. There's also the MIR form, which is the manufacturer's incident reporting form, which, if you're in the EU, those are the documents you want to use. FDA have their own versions, Form 3500As for submitting.
And for FDA, they call it MDR also. So it's confusing. Yes, so MDR for medical device reporting. So it's mainly the people say, MDR is not for European Union. No, it's also FDA, but this is medical device reporting, not medical device regulation. Yeah.
It's the problem working in an industry that is so acronym happy. We can discuss entire topics purely in acronyms. But yeah, they call it MDR. They don't really use that term vigilance. That's more kind of European kind of term, anything that's been derived from these regulations. But each competent authority, I think, is one of the main things that we want to delineate on this show. Is basically a lot of manufacturers consider reporting to notified bodies. However, the main concern with reporting is it's reporting to that competent authority. So in the UK, you can notify a notified body, but they're likely that they will say, right, thank you for the notification. We'll look into this on your next surveillance visit, for example.
Exactly, yeah. It's not really the notified body that you have to really contact first. No. It's really the competent authority. But yeah, as you said, so notified bodies, each time I contact them and I tell them, we had the vigilance report, they say, thank you for information. We'll check that during next audit. So it's like, I thought it was really an urgent matter, but no. So okay, it's fine. Because I understand that because as we said, the notified body are here to verify that you have a system in place to follow the rules. So the same of a CAPA. If your CAPA system is good, you will not check. Each time you will open a CAPA, you will not call them. So here it's the same. Yeah, if your vigilance reporting is fine, if the procedure is fine, if everything is okay from their side, no need to contact them each time you have a reporting, unless you have really a major issue. Maybe you can tell them so that they are informed. But yeah, usually they will tell you, we'll come during next round of audit and we'll come and check that everything went well.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's the thing. The notified bodies are set, from ISO 19011 auditing guidelines. They're assessing manufacturers for continuing capability of compliance. That's what they're looking for. So when they're looking at the system, they're looking to see, is this system capable of running itself without having continuous oversight from us on the daily kind of thing. The notified bodies aren't that concerned about it. If it's really serious, they would be likely if they don't feel like you've dealt with it adequately, or they like you said, if they had identified some deficiencies in your system that potentially link to it, they may want to get a bit more involved. But predominantly, the main parties of interest are the competent authorities here. For the region in which the incident has occurred is the main thing I think we need to mention, because I think one thing that we notice in manufacturers is people, because everything's globalized now, essentially. Manufacturers get a little bit kind of panicked on how to do reporting, where to do it, because it's kind of, we're saying, well, we have this product in Italy, but we also have it in France and we also have it in Japan. So who do we report to? It's something.
It's clear, and yeah, the who to report to, and should I report even in a country where there is no incident when I'm selling the same product there? So there are a lot of those type of questions. In terms also of the time of reporting, in Europe, like 10 days for this, 15 days for that, 2 days for that, etc. When it's a big threat, in the US, it's different. So there are so many differences, so many different platforms also, etc. So is it fine if I can say, have you had, if I can say, this issue to say, okay, I have to report here with this type of information, with this type of thing. So it makes it complicated, I think, no?
It does, yeah, and it is complicated, and that's the I think if I was to have a book, the title of my book would be "It's a bit more complicated than that," So, the main thing it needs to begin with is, where has the incident occurred? Is the absolute main thing, because it needs to be reported to that competent authority in line with the timelines dictated by that competent authority. So, like you said, 2 days, 15 days, 30 days, depending on where you are. From there, then it becomes about that impact assessment. So if we think of this like a CAPA, like anything in life, that impact assessment and that the main question there needs to be, where are these products sold and where are they marketed into? If they're marketed into any other regions, those regions do need to be considered as part of that vigilance impact assessment, as being not incidents occurred in that region. However, incidents occurred in other regions, and that's when you need to take into account all of this different reportability criteria per region. So that's when it becomes really important to have a QMS that is up to scratch to do this quickly and effectively, to make sure, because these timelines, they start to tick down as soon as the organization becomes aware, is the terminology.
Yeah. So this is important, becomes aware. Means what? Because officially aware, or just heard about it and maybe it's not clear. I mean, this is, as you said, this is when the clock starts to make the reporting or the information. Maybe people will say, I never heard about it, even if they heard about it, but officially they never heard about it. It was a rumor, something like that. So, I mean, is there some clarification about that?
Yeah, so the phrase becomes aware isn't really defined anywhere that well. In my experience, and you've probably seen this as well in your experience, Munir, the manufacturer, as soon as they become aware of an alleged deficiency, and again, alleged is another key term here. It's referenced in a lot of these GHTF, IMDRF documentation, and the med devs is alleged. Becoming aware for an organization should essentially be thought of if anyone in the organization becomes aware of it. And that can go from the top, from the CEO, to the person that comes in and sets up the breakfast in the morning. If they pick the phone up and they have access to it, and they're told, someone, with this device has had a serious injury or has been, a death has occurred, that, in terms of the regulatory vigilance timelines, that is when the clock starts ticking. It's not when the QA manager gets notified of it.
Exactly, and when you look at the regulation, they are always saying when it becomes aware, then the clock is starting, and then from there you have to inform from 2 days or 3 days or whatever, etc. So this is mainly the rules. I'm not sure that I never saw that, but I'm not sure that they're really if I can say, alert you that for example, if you had to inform between 15 days. And you have missed 1 day and it has 16 days informed. So I'm not sure they are really, if I can say, warning you. But the idea is mainly that even if you are not sure if this is reportable or not, better to report it. So this is many things.
Absolutely.
But when you talk to manufacturers, if they are not sure, they say, I'm not sure, so I prefer not to report it because maybe it's not reportable. So this is the thing. So do we have an advice maybe to those people that are not sure if this is to be reported? Because as I've said, they don't want to use this process. One thing that they think, and they may think, is that by reporting or by making a recall, they will be on the journal in the next day, that everybody will be telling that they are a bad company, etc. I just maybe tell them, go to the website of the authorities and check that there is those big companies that are in the that are public companies now that have a lot of if I can say shareholders or stockholders, etc. Those companies are reporting things and they are still alive and there is no issue, etc. So the reporting is just to make a date also. So can we maybe talk also about that? Hey, just a second. Do you need a EU, Swiss or UK representative? Then choose Easy Medical Device. We can represent you and also become your importer. Contact us at eo@easymedicaldevice.com.
Yeah, absolutely. So a lot of this is a cultural thing, you know, this and I think people need to remember that there are people at the end of these devices. And I think that's the main thing that we need to consider. So organizations typically, because like you said, shareholders and pressure, because, you know, a lot of people have had a lot of bad experiences with, say, competent authorities or notified bodies, unannounced inspections, etc. So there is often an appetite to not try and report things because if you can manage it in-house. But like you said, that date in the sand, that honesty, openness and transparency with competent authorities, like, you know, competent authorities, not so much notified bodies again, is extremely important. And, you know, if an organisation submits, say, a near incident, for example, you know, near incidents are very contentious topics because, you know, you get people fighting about what's reportable or what's not. You know, unless you have a really, really strong justification that you can document in your QMS and you're all happy with it and your whole management team, so your QMR, etc., signs off on it and is happy with it, you should report it and it should be reported as a near incident. Just because it's been reported as a near incident does not mean your competent authorities, you're going to go up in that list as well, because competent authorities are very busy. You know, they're very busy at the moment as with everything going on. They're trying to designate people. They're dealing with devices that are really high risk. You know, there's a queue, you know. And I think, it's a really good point about that these companies still continue to manufacture because products are placed on the market because the benefit outweighs the risk. Unless at any point through that life cycle, through vigilance reporting, that benefit risk ratio starts to turn on its head, that's when companies truly have a problem. Until then, things are always going to happen. It's about having robust processes and the openness and honesty to be, you know, that culture of reporting is really important for top management and businesses to set out that it's okay to report their stuff.
Exactly. And also, as you mentioned, the process for reporting, mainly you have to write that on the procedure, but the process is not like, oh, I am aware and immediately I'm informing. As we said, they give you like 2 days if it's really a public threat, 10 days or 15 days if it's a serious or it killed someone, if I can say. So 10 days means that during those 10 days, you can make the investigation, try to understand what happened, how many products were impacted, where those products were sold, where they are located, etc. So you make an investigation and then you gather all those information, you analyze the risk. So you are making really a HHE, we call that, so many hazard analysis to verify if there is really a health issue or not, etc. And then with all those information, normally the top management is balancing the risk and say, okay, we just we do nothing because there is no risk at all. We open a CAPA maybe because we have to collect things, but there is no public issue, or we have really an issue. So then we have to inform the authorities and do some activities of just maybe a field action, or to do a recall by saying that the product should be coming back. So you see that there is many stages before we arrive to this final information to the authorities.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's those robust QMS processes, making sure that can happen in line with that timeline, and that they are treated seriously. You know, I think the main thing is you know, after becoming aware, manufacturers, they all, you know, again, like you said, regardless of the severity of the incident, you have that kind of 2 days there to do that impact assessment and understand what's going on. There's also follow-up reporting, where you would initially report and say, we've potentially found this, or we're not sure about it, we're having a look at it. And then you would be able to do a follow-up report to say, on investigating further, we have post-market safety data to show that there's no safety signals with this device. This was a near miss. We're gonna, you know, here's what we're doing about it, basically, and, you know, and follow up. And then competent authority looks at that and says, yep, they submitted that initial report. They followed up in the amount of time that they said they would. no issue. And the competent authority looks at that and they're saying that manufacturer is being diligent. They are doing the right thing. They're doing the right thing when no one's looking at them, which is the most important thing.
And when you say initial reporting, what is also important is that if you don't know if you should report or not, and you are reaching the limit of 10 days or 15 days, etc., or 30 days, the thing is report with an initial reporting, and then this will give you some time to continue to do your investigation. It's just to give you more time for that. So then the authorities are aware that there is something ongoing, and then they can contact you later to say, okay, what is the process now? What is the situation, etc., etc. So I had to help some manufacturers on this process, and I can understand how confusing they are. Because it's the first time they are doing that, and they say, oh, should I do this? Should I do that? For example, I had a case where there was an issue in Germany, but the product was sold in the whole European Union. We're able to identify that this issue was only for the German market because they had made a specific packaging for this German market that created that. So no need to inform everybody then. But one thing was that you have to inform also their initial competent authorities because they were selling that from outside of Germany. So there are a lot of things like that where they were not really aware for how to do that. So it's why having a quality management system procedure that is describing all those steps is really important. And one question I always get is mainly, but I'm selling my products in Europe, in US, in Canada, in Australia, in Brazil, etc. Should I have one procedure for each, or what would be the strategy? So what would you maybe recommend people to do there?
Yeah, so it depends on the manufacturer's appetite for how they want to do it. There's no requirement to have one procedure or several procedures to manage it. Typically, my recommendation would be to have one vigilance procedure, which is, almost, if I could say, a policy, essentially, kind of vigilance policy. And then, depending again on what markets that you're selling into, utilize decision trees as the way of, understanding, what's going on. So in your vigilance procedure, kind of cascade that down and start, top level and say, right, we have an issue. And then from there, it's saying, where did this issue occur? Decision tree. Where did this issue occur? And then saying, okay, right, it occurred here. You need to report that to that competent authority. And then from there, it becomes this impact assessment where you could have a decision tree per territory, for example. So MDSAP, say you only had MDSAP like Canada and Australia. You could have a decision tree for Canada, a decision tree for Australia, and all you do is complete that. And then if it's not reportable, you archive and you record that decision that you made as the non-reportability, because if it's not been justified, if there's no evidence of it, it's not being considered, and log that. So I would say decision trees are an extremely powerful tool for vigilance. They allow manufacturers to set up systems in a really efficient way. And I'm very visual. I know you're very visual. Like, it helps people that do the work at that time, to be able to fly through things really quickly. So I would recommend one procedure using decision trees, kind of cascading it at the bottom for the different regulatory requirements.
No, it's clear. And also mentioning which database or which platform to go to report all the process, which form to fill, etc. So there are a lot of things that should be mentioned then. Mainly the use of a procedure and the training of those people is really important because, as I've said, when it's the first time, you have to have some guidances for this kind of thing. In terms of information, so if I want to understand because vigilance reporting is something that you are doing. So then, as we said, there are some databases that are filled, so you can find out if your vigilance reporting was reported or not on the databases. So how can we access those public information, because it's public? It's not, the MIR form is not public, but the field safety notice is public, so we know exactly what you are recommending. So how do we access all those information?
Yeah, so I think one of the good things about Vigilance Munir is that there's lots of information, and I think that shows how seriously that competent authorities and notified bodies take vigilance. The sheer amount of documentation on it. So there's a lot of documentation from GHTF or IMDRF. They have, we can link that, where they have like a big list of documents that show guidance on how to develop a vigilance system, considering how to integrate it with your QMS. There's also the MedDev on guidance for vigilance systems, which is a really good document, and that's obviously now being considered as part of the MDR. But for the databases of where reporting would occur, it would be per competent authority. So MHRA have the MORE database, which is manufacturers' online reporting environment, I believe. That's good. Acronyms again. That's for MHRA. So again, anyone would need to go in there, register, manufacturers go in there, create a registration. That portal's up and running and it accepts vigilance reports. So that's how manufacturers in the UK should report vigilance incidents. FDA have the MOD database where users as well as manufacturers can go in there. That's a very established system that's been in place for years, and it looks to be what the MORE database and what UDAMED is going to be based upon seems to come from the FDA there, which is quite interesting.
Everybody knows the MOD database because even when we are doing the vigilance report, the post-marketing surveillance or any activity, you are mainly going also there to find if there is any issue that is for your type of devices also. So MOD is really well known. And I hope UDAMED will be, if I can say, also going to in the same way. Because the objective is also that we have also one place in Europe to get that. Because for the moment in Europe, you have to go to the health authority in France, ANSM, for finding the French one. I tried to go to the German one, but it doesn't appear anymore. So I don't know if there is they change their rules. So you have to go to each country one by one to identify the reporting that was done for each of the countries there.
Yeah, unfortunately at the moment that's kind of what needs to happen. You know, the UDAMED vigilance module is not live yet. I haven't seen any kind of schedules of roughly when that module is going to be live. I think that may be prioritized.
2026, if I remember. Because they have published the timeline. I think Q2 2026. Where it will be mandatory to use that module, and 2027 or 2028. I can't remember. There are some dates there, but 2026 I think will be the date where normally it's what is planned. UDAMED will be or mandatory for this module, for vigilance module.
So at the current time of this kind of recording, it's not live. So. So it would have to be done per competent authority. That is a good document that we can share, which it's from the EU Commission. If you are selling into Europe, it does have a list of all of the member states with the contact details of where the MIR form should be submitted to. For those manufacturers. It is a really good document. It's maintained by the EU Commission.
Share that, and I will put that on the show notes, and that people can get that also.
That'd be good.
In terms of where to find the information, I just had also on my podcast a few companies that were also aggregating all the information from the different websites. We had first, for example, Medboard, which is mainly the company that is doing all this regulatory intelligence. We had Medboard on the podcast multiple times with Ivan Perez-Charmot. We have also Udin. There will be also a podcast with Udin soon, where we talk about post-marketing surveillance with proactive, reactive. There was also Basil System in the US. We had that with the podcast with post-marketing surveillance with Rob Packard. So there are also multiple tools that are existing where it helps you to gather those information at once instead of you going to each of the databases one by one. So many of those tools are available, and you can also go and visit them or check the website, the podcast episode that we have done with those people there. So in terms of the vigilance reporting now, so mainly it's one system, but it should be linked to multiple, as we talked earlier about Kappa also, if they maybe it's not moving to recall, but it's Kappa, etc. So is there some way to understand it clearly exactly how this is linked to maybe multiple systems here?
So it should form part of that, these kind of measurement processes within the QMS, so we call them the feeder processes essentially. So it's a key, I think, main thing that I see people, considering vigilance in is customer complaints, which is totally fair enough. That's it's absolutely critical when they are correct. And that's when, you would have in linked to your customer complaints, when anything, but not only complaints, but customer feedback. Let's say that, because positive and negative. When an alleged, this word, complaint comes in, the manufacturer's customer complaint system should be able to consider, is that reportable or not? And then that should be linking out to your vigilance processes as a consideration to say, this is not reportable, and your justification as to why. And your justification as to why doesn't need to be bespoke every time. It could just be, it does not meet the requirements in our vigilance procedure, and that's it. It's done. Your kind of reportability assessment has been done. However, if it is reportable, it would have to initiate from that customer complaints procedure, where you would say, yeah, this is reportable, therefore initiate vigilance. So that's kind of one element, is customer complaints, which I think is the kind of main way people assess vigilance and consider the input.
Yeah, but CAPA also, I think, for example, if you have a major issue within your manufacturing plant or something, so maybe it can lead also to, then we have maybe some problems on the market, then we can also link to this vigilance reporting. So CAPA can be an output, but also an input in that case.
Yeah, so one is kind of complaints coming in, so kind of inbound. The other side is really from us looking at the processes in place and identifying any deficiencies, that say suppliers or again in the field from post-market surveillance. I think it's one thing, vigilance is not post-market surveillance. It forms part of that system. Something important to delineate. But yeah, your CAPA assessments as well as your NC assessments, because if organizations delineate between NC CAPA processes, CAPA being more severe, should have that consideration of, is this reportable? And should also link out to that vigilance procedure and that vigilance assessment. Change management could also be considered as part of this, depending on how the manufacturers considered it, but it's likely to be those significant, non-significant change assessments. But if we're sticking to purely incident, the main processes would be the NC CAPA procedures and customer complaints. And then anything clinical out of that as well, so post-market surveillance and kind of linking it all together as part of that big risk management system.
No, it's great. And so the main form that we have in Europe, as we said, to fill is the MIR form. So I had also, I don't know for the UK if they are planning to do a new one, but for now they still use the MIR form also for the UK. In Switzerland also they use that. And one thing that you have maybe to understand also is that if you want to fill this MIR form, you have to use the IMDRF guidance also. So something that was a bit strange for me to say that they are linking to a guidance that is not a European guidance or something, but really an international one, which is mainly a guidance that is giving you a lot of codes, a lot of information that you should use to qualify what is exactly the issue about your problem here. Yeah. So Adam, we'll share that on a document with all those information, I think, so that we can have that. So please go to the show notes and you'll find all those links and things on a downloadable document that Adam will prepare for us, and then you can get that. Okay, Adam, I think it's really straightforward now. I hope people understood what is a vigilance reporting and how they have to build that and work on that. Mainly, the most important thing is the understanding of what are the laws in the countries where you are selling, to create a quality management system that is working with the procedure that is working, then to educate your people or to train your people about when to report, when to inform, what is really reportable or not reportable. Because you should not be alone on this. You should also involve all your team on that, because they are the ones that are making maybe the changes or deciding on things. So you have to understand that.
Yes.
So how can you help maybe the audience about this process? So you are a consultant, so you are also offering your services for that?
Yeah, so I do remediation activity for, if vigilance procedures need to be kind of brought up to scratch, or if organizations have had deficiencies raised against general QMSs. Vigilance forms kind of part of that section, so that was kind of where my little company would come into place, going in helping manufacturers establish these procedures, link them out into regulatory territories. We also do lots of kind of QMS general activity as well as RA focused stuff. So I think I also have a little newsletter where we send out every, not that periodically, every now and then, and send out some good guidance on some projects we've been working on and common things we see in industry, because a lot of the problems that manufacturers face, they often think they're the only one facing it, but it's actually really common.
No, exactly.
Everyone's facing the same problems, lack of notified bodies, issues of complex vigilance processes, not understanding CAPAs or NCs, so that's kind of really where we come in, being able to help with that, and being, a bit of a conscience to organizations, as well as speaking to top management is something that I do fairly regularly, is going into organizations and sitting with leadership teams and, trying to instill that quality culture of, which is absolutely the most important thing, is doing the right thing. Especially with incidents when it starts to come down to patients at the end of it, there are patients at the end of these devices. I think, we all need to remember that when we work in this industry. I think it's really easy to forget that sometimes.
No, it's, I mean, one of my motto, if I can say that I'm publishing everywhere, is mainly, would I use this product if it was a member of my family that I can say had to use it. So this makes it really clear that if you will not use it on your child, on your wife or things, unless you hate them, if I can say, then you should not use it, or there is something wrong there. So you have to warn that. But mainly this is the point where, as we say, be conscious that behind or any people that will be using this device is a human. So mainly you have to be conscious of that and not just say, oh, it's fine, it's not a problem or whatever. I mean, so Adam will have all the information on the show notes. So we'll download people who can download then the document, the PDF document with all the information there, and get also your details for if there is any need for contacting you for this kind of thing. But if you have any question anyway on the audience, so you can also place that on the comments of this episode on the YouTube channel or on the LinkedIn or on the Spotify podcast episode, so that you can ask maybe questions or send me also a question at info@easymedicaldevice.com, and we can try to answer that to you. Okay, so Adam, it was really a pleasure to have you. Thank you for your help, and I hope people are now clear about what is vigilance reporting. But if they are not clear, they can still contact us, and then we can try to answer to that. Okay, Adam, thank you, and I wish you a nice day.
Thank you, sir. It's been great.
Bye.
Take care.